So
Good.
you come to Tucson, you drop off some paintings, a new sculpture, and then I snag you with a big hook and pull you into my podcast room.
Yeah, that's not very nice.
I know, right?
Not very
It's like, how did you escape my podcast is what I was thinking, but you did. So
I live far away in a remote area.
yeah, you do live far away in a remote area. So we have Jan Mapes on today on my podcast, and you live in rural Colorado, right? A farming community?
It's actually ranching, and there's prairies and canyons and pinon trees. It's very New Mexico looking.
Oh, wow. And for those of the people who haven't grown up in rural areas, there is a big difference between farming and ranching. You notice she corrected that.
Yeah.
Most people put them as a combination.
We do not till the soil.
I, growing up in eastern New Mexico, realized the differences.
Yes.
Yeah. And so where exactly is that? Where did you grow up? Not where you grew up, but where do you live right now exactly?
Where do I live now?
I mean, you don't have to give the exact detail.
I live in the southeast corner of the state. So if people are not familiar with that, a lot of people say, Durango. And I'm like, no, that's southwest.
Yeah.
So the last town in the state is Trinidad.
I know where Trinidad is.
And I
Very well.
live
I like
like
Trinidad.
70 miles east of Trinidad.
Oh, east of Trinidad. Interesting.
And there's a drainage that starts at Trinidad called the Purgatory River.
Yes.
And it cuts down through and makes lots of canyons and bluffs and mesas and red rocks, very much like Sedona.
Yeah.
And I live close to all that. We have a lot of trees on our property. And
Is there a town in that area?
I live 10 miles from a town that is 50 people.
No.
Yeah.
That's not very big.
No. And a school. And if it weren't for the school, we would have nothing to do.
Well, it's funny. I love Trinidad. I think it's like one of the most gorgeous areas. And I guess it's starting to be found. Is that a true statement? Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it's had its issues, but it seems like it should be.
It's got a pretty brilliant or bright and exciting history.
Yeah.
There was the mafia and like way back, lots of stuff going on.
Yeah, it's an early town, right?
Yes,
From like 18, maybe 70s.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yes, and the architecture is really cool.
Yeah,
Brick streets.
Yeah, the whole downtown is still cool and old. But for some reason, it seems it's kind of been missed with Colorado, because everything about Colorado has kind of exploded.
Yes, and it's got a ways to go to catch up to some of the other towns.
Right. But
it's unique and of its own self.
Yeah. Do you want to see that or not?
Not really.
Yeah. I get it.
Sometimes I think there's too many people and because then lots of times they build these little towns into quaint copies
Aspens.
of each other.
Yeah. Or they become Aspen or one of these other towns.
Right.
I mean, Aspen was a cool little town.
Yeah.
Still a cool town, but it's not like it was at all.
Exactly, because when they change them into quaintness, or I don't know what you want to call it,
right?
They all become very similar.
Yeah, but you didn't grow up in Colorado, right? You grew up in.
My dad was in the Air Force.
Okay.
A career Air Force bomber pilot during World War II.
Wow.
And so I'm the youngest of 3 children, and so Dad retired when I was, I think it was between 9th and 10th grade. And he wanted to move to Colorado because he skis, he plays golf, all the cool reasons. And so I went to high school in Castle Rock, and then I met my husband there, who's from Walsenburg.
Yeah, he's from Walsenburg. Wow, that's another cool city or town.
Yeah,
definitely not a city.
It is.
And so, but he didn't want to stay in Walsenburg.
No. You always want to get away from where your home is.
Yeah, well, there's like, 3,000 people maybe in Walsenburg? Not even?
Not even.
Yeah, maybe in the basin, the whole basin. Yeah.
And it has a history from coal mining from way back.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of old relic towns and stuff around. Right. So, but anyway, so I met him, and he's in the cattle business and trained cutting horses for years and years, and he's retired now.
Yeah.
And so I showed cutting horses and all that. And we moved from Castle Rock area, which was just booming.
So let me
South Denver.
Before you move to Castle Rock, do that.
Yeah.
So, but I want to get back a little more about your really your high school and all that. So when you were a kid, grade school, let's even go there. You're moving around with your dad still at that point. But were you interested in art, and did you show some kind of acumen toward art at that time?
When I was very small, I didn't ever read very well. So most kids grab a book and they read. Well, I would grab, more often than not, a Western Horseman. And then I would draw whatever photos were in the Western Horseman that month.
So they were usually cows, horses, cowboys.
And my grandparents on my mother's side lived in Arkansas, and he was a cowboy. So
where in Arkansas were they? Do you remember?
Hope, Arkansas.
Oh, okay.
Home of Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I grew up loving horses through my grandparents. My brother and sister don't care anything about horses or the cowboys or cattle.
And you would go out to Hope and on their farm. Was that a farm or a ranch or both?
I think in Arkansas they're farms.
Yeah.
I think.
My dad was came up from a farming community in Arkansas as well.
Really? Where?
And near Hot Springs area. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
He was
they'd have cows.
Older though. He would have been your father's age. So at that time.
I think in Arkansas you can have quite a few more head of cattle on the acres than you can out west.
Yeah, that makes sense because there's more water. Yeah, they can just support it.
A lot more water. Yeah.
So you're growing up as a kid. You're doing the Horseman magazine, and you're doing drawings and things. And did people start to recognize you as an artist? Your high school teachers, or your junior high teachers, or your mom or dad?
My mom and dad, of course. I mean,
right.
That's their job.
Right. Well, not always. Well, sometimes they might. Yeah, that's pretty, but you don't do that for a living, kind of thing.
Right.
And did you feel any of that? I mean, your dad's a military.
My
guy.
mom always was very supportive, and dad thought it was nice. It was like what you said, but don't do that for a living.
Right.
So when I went to college, there was no art. I said, well, okay, what can I do for a living where I can still go home and saddle my horse and go ride across the
because that's what
prairie.
You really loved was
my horses. And art was, I loved art, but I really wanted to be a horse trainer.
I see.
And so in college I went to Greeley teacher's school, so I became a science teacher of 8th and 9th graders, earth science, and I lasted 3 whole years.
Yeah, but you taught for 3 years.
I taught for 3 years.
And that was that was your degree was as a teacher. That's what you got your degree in?
Yes.
And during that time in college, were you doing art or making sculpture or doing any of that?
No.
Did it even
maybe, just like on a small scale, like doodling.
So at that point, you're really trying to figure out kind of who you are, I guess, right?
Right. And I found out that I wasn't a science teacher in the junior high.
Yeah,
and I met my husband, and he was a rancher and a horseman and all that. And
that was in Greeley? He was
That
there?
was in Castle Rock.
Okay.
And so one day I just told him I'd come home with migraines and I just hate this. I have to do something. I'll fry French fries if I have to not do this.
To deal with 7th and 8th graders?
Yes.
Yeah, I get that.
And so he said, well, just quit and come help me on the ranch. And I went, I'll be there tomorrow. So he's the one that encouraged me. And then when we got married, we went to Santa Fe on our honeymoon. And I said, I got to go to all the art galleries and see that. And I fell in love on our honeymoon with sculpture.
And what year would have this been?
1980.
Okay, so in 1980, you go to Santa Fe.
Yep.
And you at that point, you're working on the ranch with your husband? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. And so you guys go down. And then do you remember any particular art piece or gallery that you went in at that time in 1980?
No, because, I was just in the door, out the door, any art gallery I could find.
Yeah.
And I looked at paintings and liked them, but it was the sculpture that just enamored me. I said, I got to find out how to do that. Mm-hmm. And so I set out and I did. I knew T.D. Kelsey.
Mm. How did you know him?
Because he had a ranch east of the ranch we were, so east of Castle Rock.
Yeah.
He lived over there, and I knew he was a sculptor. And so as soon as I got home from Santa Fe, I was knocking on his door.
You literally went and just knocked on his door and said...
But he knew me.
Yeah,
I mean, he knew me from the horse deal and the ranching deal and the cutting horses. He had them too.
Yeah.
So he helped me get started.
What do you think he thought when you said, I don't know if you said, I want to be a sculptor, or if you just said, I want to learn how to do this? Or did you do both? Or do you remember?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
But I know that he was very willing to help, and he critiqued my work, and he's just a wonderful person.
Yeah, he's your mentor.
He is my mentor. And he would even be working on a big piece, and he'd come over and he'd ask me what I thought.
Right.
And I'm like,
Well,
you're asking me?
But you do know horses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, there's a reason I could see him asking that, maybe not even from the sculptor point, but going, did you get it right?
Mm-hmm. And a lot, artists get a lot of help from soliciting family members and just people off the street and say, come in and look at this painting or this sculpture. And you can say anything you want to, and it's not going to make me mad or hurt my feelings or anything. But people will see things because we have worked on them and worked on them. A lot of times, there will be some little
you can't catch
some little glitch or something that you want to change, that a person that's not even an artist will come in and go, hey, what's that? Yeah. Or that looks a little funny. And you're like, oh, wow.
Yeah, some artists will use, like I know Catherine Stedman and Ed Mel both use mirrors.
Yes, I use mirrors.
There you go. Yeah. It just helps find those things you can't see.
And I grab anybody that shows up at our house and come over here.
Yeah, they probably don't show up at your house as often, being out in the middle of nowhere.
It has to be a destination.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah.
So he really kind of sparked your interest in doing sculpture. And how long did that go?
And he and my husband really, really encouraged me. So I went home after Santa Fe and after seeing TD, and we were having like one of those 4-day blizzards. Mm-hmm. And
I don't know, but I'll assume that occurs some places.
Yeah, cold.
Yeah.
And my husband had played around with some sculpture, and he had wax. And now we use clay. Mm-hmm. And so he had wax, and he'd made these little figurines and stuff. And so he had the stuff in the closet. Mm-hmm. And I said, man, I wish I had that stuff to start a sculpture. And he goes, I have the stuff. So he goes and gets it out of the closet. And I make my very first sculpture of a horse head and a neck. And he's got his ears pinned, and he's like mad. And Jim says, well, so what's he mad about? And I go, it's this weather, and we're stuck in this house. So I made another horse who was like biting at that horse. And so you had a pair of horse heads biting at each other, and I named it Ticked Off. and that's why they were mad, because of that snowstorm. And that's the very first sculpture. And friends and neighbors and family and everybody says, oh, that's cool, that's cool. You need to make another one. I'm like, really? Oh, you just don't really believe that you should.
No, I get it.
Yeah. And so then the second one and the third one, and that's how I got started.
And so when you did Ticked Off, did you actually make it into bronze?
Yes. And I sold a couple.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And
do you still have one at all at your house?
I don't.
Yeah. But somewhere out there, there's a couple ticked off. Uh-huh. And so how long, so you go to Santa Fe in 1980, you work with T.D. Kelsey right away. And then how long was that process before you started actually making sculpture like this one, the Ticked Off one?
After I talked with T.D. and all that.
Yeah. So it was right away.
Pretty right away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so did you feel something when you started that? I mean, when you were making that sculpture, did you go, this feels right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really liked, and I love TD's work and the movement that he gets. And I wanted to be able to express that.
Yeah.
And
I think that's one of the things I think about when I see your sculptures. I think of your sculpture is the movement that it's in it. I mean, there's no doubt it's one of yours when you can see what you do. Yeah, like the new sculpture you just brought, which we'll get to, but we're still back in 1981 at this point.
Oh, man. We got a long way to go.
You got a long way. What do we got, 40 years? 40 years to go. Okay.
Yeah, and lots of gray hair.
Yeah, only gray, yeah. You didn't have gray hair when I met you.
No.
Of course, I didn't have gray hair, and I had more of it when you met me. So that's okay. Because we've been showing together for over 20 years.
Yes.
So, which is ridiculous, but it's true.
Yep.
So what happened then? So did you make a concerted effort to go, I think this is what I need to do for my life at that point, or did that take a
with
while?
a lot of encouragement from my husband.
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
so
so the
important.
first-
Aren't they so important?
They are.
Spouses
They're the
that will
best.
support you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he probably saw you were happy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he saw you when you were unhappy. When you were coming home with a migraine and said, I'd rather do anything I'd do French fries instead of this. So he didn't like that, I'm sure.
Right. Right. So in the 80s, we ran a ranch just south of Castle Rock called Greenland. And so I had lots of riding days in the saddle, and we started showing cutting.
Working the cattle and things?
Working cattle and gathering them and such. And then Jim was a horse trainer, so he would train the cutting horses right there. And I was kind of the assistant. And so for a long time, the art business was not full time. It was more of a hobby when I wasn't helping him.
Yeah. But you were making stuff and working with some galleries. How were you selling art at that time?
Mostly word of mouth.
Yeah. So you were doing it. You'd make something, all sculpture at this point, right?
Yes.
And you would make a sculpture. You would get it cast in bronze.
Yes.
And where did you get that? And how did you know how to do that?
Getting them cast.
Yeah. Or did you go to Kelsey and say, where do I go? Or what did you do?
Well, I don't know who told me, but Loveland, Colorado is the mecca of
the
foundries.
Yeah.
And so I went up there and got started, and there was a man in Denver who helped me a lot. He did a lot of my molds and some metal chasing and such.
Because there's a lot to know.
He has since retired.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to know in that part. I mean, people just think you make it and you're done, but that's just part A.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I pretty much don't know how to do the foundry process myself, but I oversee and make sure that it's as I wanted it.
Yeah, you make sure the patinas are how you want it and it comes together. I think that's true for most sculptors.
Sure.
I think very few actually understand it. I think Susan Klewer is one of those that, is different because she actually worked in a foundry.
Right.
Yeah, and that gives you a leg up on understanding it. But I would say almost all the sculptors I know don't really know. I mean, they understand it, but they don't know the details of it.
I couldn't go to work in a foundry tomorrow and make the good money. No.
Yeah. But
I don't have that kind of experience.
Yeah, well, you don't have to either.
Yes,
it's a hard job.
Right.
So at this point, and we're talking about mid-'80s kind of thing, you're selling to your friends and family and word of mouth, and then really working with your husband on cutting horses and the ranch.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
That's probably like the first 10 years.
10 years.
And maybe I got in a gallery or two.
Yeah.
Then in 1990,
Yeah.
we did not own that ranch. We just ran it.
Right.
Douglas County was just booming, and anybody that was, in their 20s and 30s, friends of ours, whose even their parents owned ranches, sold out and went other places. So it was like all of our friends went north, south, east, and west.
Right.
And they are still that spread out today. And so we went east. In eastern Colorado, and the property down there was cheaper, and we were able to buy something of our own with a partner. And so from 1990 to 2006, we lived at Sugar City, Colorado.
I don't even know where that is. Where is that?
It's north of La Junta.
Yeah, I know where La Junta is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Sugar City is named Sugar City from back in the 60s. It was, they had sugar beets that grew there, and there was sugar plants.
Yeah, because that's more farming.
And then Kali sugar.
Right.
But our ranch was north of Sugar City, and it's prairie. It was all...
Yeah. And tornado countries, yeah.
A little bit, yeah. And lots of tumbleweeds.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Jim trained cutting horses, and we ranched there and ran cattle. And we went to it's called Ranching for Profit. And it's a school, like it lasts 4 or 5 days. And it's not just for ranchers, but that's how it was started. So we went to this seminar, not a seminar, but a school. And you sit down with, you have your own group of people, and you might be a winemaker, and somebody else is a rancher, and somebody else is maybe not in agriculture at all. And so we go through all of our businesses, and you have to tell them how everything works and, like your profit and loss. And,
Right.
You had to crunch numbers.
Right.
And figure out what your strengths are and your weaknesses are, as a person.
What was
Me and
what were they? Do you remember?
mine's doing this.
Was what?
Talking to public speaking.
That's
my weakness.
Is that what they said?
No, well, it just is.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then my husband had, he had to do it too.
Right.
And I'm not organized enough. That was one of my weaknesses. I'm kind of scattered, which I think most artists are.
Yeah, I think except on when they're making their art, then they're laser focused.
Right, but I'm talking like my desk.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Hey, well, I guess I'm an artist then.
Yeah.
As you can tell by my
Yeah, it's just like
my office.
Right. So anyway, long story short, we were at this school,
Yeah.
and they at the end of the week, they said, "Well, we unanimously, everybody here thinks that your best way to make money is to promote Jan in her art business." Now, we're not telling you to get out of the cattle business or
Right.
the horse train business, but that this is a gold mine. So during that time, I was using the spare bedroom as my my studio.
Right.
And so they said, "You need to build her a studio." And I'm like, "Ah." Yeah. And so we went home, built a studio, and it just took off.
Why was that?
I think because you're just more creative and more productive and
Committed, maybe?
yes. And I turned it in, it was my job.
Yeah, that's right.
And it wasn't, when it was in the spare bedroom, you'd hear the dryer go off and you go, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay, I'll be right back." And so you're doing stuff in the house.
Right.
Whereas when you go to your job
Right.
and set some hours and some parameters and stuff, that's what made the difference.
Yeah. You made a commitment to your craft. And
In that would have been in the 90s sometime,
yeah. Do you remember early 90s, maybe?
probably early.
Yeah. And you made a commitment financially to build it,
Yes.
which
Was the scariest part for me. 'Cause,
yeah.
Yeah.
And what was your husband's feeling on all that? Do
He
you remember?
was gung ho.
I bet he was.
Yeah.
I can see it. I can just he knew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was the one that going, "Are you sure we should spend the money?"
Right. So then it really, you're committed, you see your path forward as an artist. And so what did you do at that point differently than you had been doing before?
I just, I started painting, watercolors, oils, anything I felt like, and sculpt, and just tried to just not put any boundaries
On being an artist.
on being an artist.
Yeah. And did you start looking for more galleries?
Yes.
Yeah. At that point? Yeah.
Yep. And you get an article here and there, and then the galleries see you, and
Right. That's true. I don't
it-
remember how we came together, but you might.
I don't either.
I don't know. I just saw your stuff somewhere and liked it.
I'd have to think on it.
Yeah.
I bet I could.
Well, it's been that long, so
yes,
I don't.
yeah.
I don't really
Yeah.
remember. So this is early mid '90s, right? And so your husband's still doing his thing, which is he just doing the cutting horses at this point, or is he also still trying to do ranching and cutting horses?
Both.
And are you helping with the ranching at this point once you have the studio, or
Yes, except for not as many hours.
Yeah.
And so then he hired helpers to work for him,
yeah, but
which we never had before because it was me.
yeah, but you're still living up north of La Junta at this point.
Yes, at Sugar City.
Yeah, Sugar City. I never heard of that town. So great name though.
It is.
And how long did you stay there before you moved to where you are now? Is that a ways down the road?
16 years.
Okay, so you were there for a long time.
Yeah, so from 90 to 06. And the whole time I was there, well, not the whole time. Sometime during that time, we went for a drive or whatever. We went south of La Junta, and we're driving along, and it's like prairie and no trees and
Right, flat.
and then and flat, and then all of a sudden it just breaks off, and you look out, and there's cedars and pinyons and canyons and rock outcroppings, and I just looked, and it's just thousands upon thousands of acres, and I just said, I have to live here.
Yeah.
I've always felt like I belong there.
Yeah.
And yet I wasn't born there.
Yeah, but there was something about it, probably.
Oh, yeah, it's magical.
Yeah, I can believe it.
Still is.
It's kind of like Raton's area, right? It has that sensibility, which is really
I'm about
beautiful.
Like 40 miles at the most, not even, maybe only 30, north of the New Mexico border. And we're 100 miles in from Kansas. So then that little piece of Oklahoma is just south of us right there.
Yeah, which is also really interesting country, too. I've actually been in that area and hiked and did explored
and I
it.
hike all those canyons and bluffs. I love hiking.
Is there
every day I go?
Is there much old Native American ruins in that area? I would assume there was.
Yes,
I've never been
because of that river and then the canyons and a water source.
Yeah, always the water source.
It's always the water source.
So after that drive, you go, I got to live here, and then so how long was that till you acted on it?
I bet it took us 8 years. We started looking.
Yeah.
And the thing is that down there, it's big ranch country, and so smaller. We couldn't afford a big place, and so smaller ones were harder. Didn't come up for sale very often.
I bet.
And so we just kept looking and waiting and looking, and finally we bought a place that had an old rock house that was built probably around 1910 to 15, and all the houses, the older houses there, are made out of the block type rock.
Yeah, I know what
that we can have around there.
Right.
And so, and it was just about to fall down. Mm-hmm. The roof. You can see the sky through the roof. And everything. And we bought it, and I said, I can't knock this down. We have to
save it.
We have to save it. So that was a big job.
Oh, I bet.
And so part of and we added a room onto the house, but a big part of our house is that old rock house, and we have other rock outbuildings and stuff with the rusty metal roofs. And, I like that kind of vintage, old look.
Yeah, I lived in one of those 1930s rock house for many years. Yeah, that's great. And you're still living in that rock house?
Yes.
Yeah, very cool. And you built a studio, I assume, on this one when you did it?
Yes, but you have to walk a ways to get to it.
Yeah, well, you have
so
to
that
now go to work.
So now when the dryer goes off, you don't hear it.
Right.
Yeah. And if you're going to walk back to the house, it takes it's not far. I don't know how many feet.
Did you do that purposely? Built it away? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because at this point you recognized how important it was to have your own time, your own.
Because I get off track, and it's just like, oh, I got to go back to the house to do this. I got to go back to the house to do that. Well, it's the farther it is, the harder it is for you to hike back to the house.
Well, that thing that you went to, that school, they taught you, or they said, this is one of your problems, right? That you
structure.
Structure, and you can't focus or whatever, and you took that to heart, clearly, and that's helped you. That's interesting. That a 4-day class can do something like that for you.
It was amazing.
Yeah, and just change kind of your whole trajectory, really. Yeah.
Yeah. So we built a studio, and half of it's a studio, and the other half is like a casita. Because we only have one bedroom in the rock house. Yeah. So I have a loft and a bedroom and a little sitting area and a big sliding door that you can separate yourself from guests, which we don't get that many guests. We used to have more people would come and stay when Jim was training horses, because they would come and about that. But now that he's retired, it's like not that many people.
Yeah. So where did once you really kind of got your studio going and you're making your inroads into the art world, what were the hurdles that you found, if any? I don't know, maybe you didn't find anything. I always find that women often have some hurdles just from the fact of gender. Did you find that to be an issue or not?
Oh, maybe somewhat. I mean, not nothing huge. Nothing I hold any grudges over. Okay. So, yeah, I would say there's been a few times.
Yeah. They go, Jan.
Whatever.
Jan Mapes, and then they go, oh, I thought you were a male. Or...
Oh, there was one time I was in a gallery in Scottsdale called the Taos Gallery. And every Thursday night they had art walk.
I remember that.
Right.
Ray Roberts, I think, may have showed at one time. Yeah.
Well, so... many times during the Thursday night art walk, and you're like standing there, and here's your sculpture and all that, and Jim is standing like next to me, and people would just walk up and say, "Is this your work?" and look at him a lot and stick their hand out, And he'd say, "No, it's my wife's." It's pretty
And
cool.
that's probably, you think, partially because of the subject matter?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because, cowboys roping horses and different things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, and I don't know if I try not to think about that negative stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
It'll eat you up if you do.
Well, yeah. But I think it has been an issue for women in the Western realm. I really do.
Yeah.
I think it's changing.
Mm-hmm.
I do see that changing.
Mm-hmm.
But there has been that, I think, prejudiceness against women in some factors.
Well, and I think the one thing that I saw, and I still see, is that if a man decides to be an artist, then go
Right.
great guns, and
Right.
and because he's the breadwinner.
Right.
And so, but if a woman decides to be an artist, it's her hobby. And so people don't take you as seriously.
Yeah.
And
Clearly,
just the
that's
way-
happened at some point in your life. I can see
Mm-hmm.
that people have said that in some form or fashion.
yeah, I don't think they say it. I think it's
They imply it.
unspoken.
Yeah.
Yeah, they imply it.
Yeah,
It's
they do.
unspoken.
Oh, you're an artist.
Yeah.
What else do you do?
Well, or you're like in a group of artists standing there, and then other people standing there talking. And what do you do? And what do you do? And they think I'm just the wife standing there.
Right. Right.
So, but that's okay. Well,
Yeah, you can let the work stand for itself.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
It's not a big deal.
no, well, I think you have to learn how to deal with those kind of things and move on.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you let it, do otherwise, then
Mm-hmm.
it's problematic. So I think people like Terry Moyers and John Moyers, I think she's had to deal with that a lot.
Probably so.
Yeah, but she's got a super supportive husband, just like you do, and he will often say, "Oh no, she's the real artist in the family." He will.
Yeah.
He definitely, and I think he believes that. She's
sure.
the better artist. That he's a promoter of her work.
Oh, they're both wonderful.
Oh God, there you are. Yeah. Shout out to the Moyers.
Yes,
Two of my
exactly.
favorites.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Me too.
Yep. So
Yeah.
you make your inroads into the art world, and you start to do your art, and then what happens? What happens to your life at that point? Just make it as an artist?
Yeah.
And at any point did you quit doing the ranching, or
No.
did you always worked at both?
I help whenever he doesn't need as much of help now.
Yeah, you still run cattle?
Yes.
Yeah.
So run cattle, but we don't do the cutting horse deal. We just have ranch horses to
Yeah.
go catch and go do your job.
Yeah. Do you think
And I like going to brandings and doing ranch work.
what do you like about that? Because it's smelly, hard work, right? I mean,
It's just so Western and so historical and
Real.
and it's real, and
Yeah.
it's just the tradition of it is just cool.
Yeah. Do you get inspiration? Yeah. Do you get inspiration from that? When you're out there watching them, brand, and again, it's smelly, it's hard, it's rough, often cold or hot. You name the bait.
Windy.
Always windy. Well, that just comes with it.
Yeah.
Blowing in your face, of course. As an artist, are your creative juices going? I see something here.
A lot.
I bet.
I have a camera case that I strap on that I tie down so that I can ride horseback and it's not clacking your camera all over everything.
Right.
And I have that with me almost all the time. So it's hard to be a good helper when you're gathering the cattle or in the pens and you're trying to do this and you're trying to sort the calves off or this and that, and paying attention to your camera too.
Right.
So my neighbors that we help, the other ranchers, are quite forgiving of me being maybe in the wrong place a little bit, because they'll say, "Well, she's I'm over there going," and
Is that common, by the way, for other neighbors to help other people like that still?
it's huge where we live.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, during a branding, it's a social event and a practical event. So when you go to a branding in the spring, those ranchers will invite everybody and their wives and the kids, and you've got kids horseback, little bitty kids horseback, and they're help gathering the cattle, and it's a social. It's just a wonderful event.
And how does it?
So you have way more people than you really need.
Yeah,
but it's a celebration of your calf crop.
Right. And how does that get out? Do you get a phone call?
Yep.
Or now is it a Facebook or a?
Nope. They call us on the phone and say, well, write down the 10th and the 11th for us or whatever. And,
right.
And then they trade help and they go to other people's branding.
And what about you? So I
go to like 10 to 12 brandings and, which is so nice.
In a year, you will? 10 to 12?
In the springtime.
Yeah. Wow. That's a lot.
I know. So my art, I don't do as much art during branding season.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's spring. It's nice, and
well, you see the same thing in Native American culture, right?
Yes.
They have ceremonies that come, bean dances or different things that come, and and they just say, okay, well, we're not going to be available to do stuff at this point in time.
Right.
That comes with. I see that correlation to same thing. Exactly the same.
Yeah, your traditions are big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they should be.
And now you do painting and sculptor, and when I first started representing you, it was. I looked at you as a sculptor, and that's what we did. And then you started doing paintings. Like, oh my gosh, you can really paint too. So, what do you see yourself as one or the other?
No,
just kind of equal at this point.
Kind of equal.
And has it always been that way in your mind?
For a while. I mean, maybe not in the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I like painting. They're just different. It's just like, do you want apple pie or do you want chocolate cake?
Yeah.
And
that's
how I deal with it when I go to the studio.
Yeah.
It's like,
what am I interested in today?
What do I want to do today?
Yeah. And how is that different? I mean, what is the difference? It's mindset or sensibilities or abilities that it takes to do flat art versus 3D kind of thing?
Well, to me, sculpture is all about, both of them are all about telling a story. You're telling
I see that a lot in yours. Every one of them has a story pretty much.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So in a sculpture, the story can just be a movement.
Yeah.
Like something in a spiral shape. It's a 3-dimensional object. And when you look around it, it's candy for the eyes to see the flow and the movement of the piece and to lead the viewer's eye through the piece. With painting, it also has a flow, and you lead the viewer's eye with your edges, I lost my words.
It's okay.
So, but your edges and your values, and you lead them to the center
of the painting,
the center of interest,
yeah,
of the painting, and so color comes into play. And how you deal with the color and color temperature and all that. Whereas you don't have that in sculpture. But you still do have edges. You have soft edges, hard edges. And you use that to your advantage to lead the viewer through the piece.
And when you are titling your pieces, because your titles are always kind of fun, unique. There's something. I mean, I can tell they're different. You think about it. At least I think you do, because it seems like there's a real thought.
I try to.
Yeah. I mean, you do give that a lot of effort.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's what you're trying to say. What are you trying to say?
Right.
And I think every piece of art, even modern art, what are they trying to say?
Yeah.
And sometimes
Starry Night.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Those kind of things.
Yeah.
And Cloud World for Dixon, of course.
Right.
But what comes first for you? Is it the title or the sculpture, or does the sculpture lend itself to the title after you're done?
Or during.
Or during, yes. Do you know?
I think it lends itself most of the time to me during.
Yeah.
Well.
Have you ever got?
Or either in the beginning or during.
Yeah.
And I may not have an exact word. Sometimes it's a whole sentence of what I'm trying to portray, and I have to find the shortened words.
Yes.
At the end.
Yeah.
That say what I'm trying to say. Like I have a piece now that I'm going to have at the Briscoe night of artists.
I'll be there, by the way. Are you going to be there?
Yes.
Yeah.
I heard you were going to be there. You're going to be on a panel.
Some kind of panel, yeah.
Good.
Don't know what yet.
Oh, you don't?
They told me, but I don't know. I just said.
What day?
I don't know. I just said, put me on a panel. That's fine. I'll talk about whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, I figure I'm in the art business.
It doesn't make you nervous like it does me.
30 years of doing this. I mean, all I have to do is give my opinion. The panel doesn't really probably matter.
That's great.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure what day or, when is it coming, by the way, in case this airs?
The 25th and 6th
of March, right?
March.
Okay, there we go.
It's a Friday, Saturday.
So for those, we'll try to get this out. Hopefully people will hear about it. They have a big show there at the Briscoe, which is a shout out to the Briscoe because it's a great museum. And so you'll be part of that. Yes,
and I will be a part of that in the gallery show, and then also I'll have a piece in the auction.
Oh, nice. And what is your piece?
The piece in the auction is a painting of a guy at a branding.
Yeah.
Riding a filly that is new to it, so I named it First Time for Yeller. Because she's a little nervous about the rope and the calves and roping one and dragging it, and so she's kind of a little bit undone, but no wreck or anything. And he's got his rope ready to go get a calf.
Yeah. And that's a painting.
It's a painting.
Oh, yeah, that's fun. Yeah.
And I have another piece in it called Remnants, and it's some longhorn cattle that have escaped capture, and they are up on a hillside. So, and it is bookends. So there's 3 cattle on this one and 2 on this one, and you can join them together and have 5 cattle in one piece, and not use them for bookends.
Oh, I get it.
Or you can put one across the room and the other one across the room. So it has a lot of versatility to it. But it took me the whole piece. I kept saying, the getaways, the escapees.
Right.
I kept trying to come up with the word, and finally my husband walked in the door.
Yeah.
And I said, I told him all those different words, and I'm trying to say that they miss these on the gather, and they know they're smart and they know how to get away.
Yeah.
And he says remnants, and I went, that's it. So he helped me with that.
Yeah. Well, if you can get it to a single word, that's really the best.
It is.
Yeah. Difficult though. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. When I write my books, often I have the title before I write the book, and that kind of helps me. Occasionally not. Occasionally I'll get one that's, I'm writing a book right now. I won't say the titles, but I came up with another one the other day. I was like, God, that's almost as good. Maybe better. But it changes a little. The title can change the context of how you see, for me, the book. I'm sure it's same could change the context for how you see the sculpture too. Yes. Just with remnants, I mean, you could change, you see it one way, but if it had a funny kind of bent to it, you might change the way one of the cattle is escaping or something.
Yes.
Broke for the fences, or you can call it all
I've
sorts
got the one steer is at the top of the hill, and he's stopped, and he's like looking back over the scene, and his buddies.
See, there you go.
Yeah.
Escaped. Whatever.
Right.
But yeah. And it's interesting because those are, I see what those titles are from the point of view of the cow or the steer. Yeah. Remnants is from the
point of view of the cowboy.
Cowboy.
Yes.
Yeah, because that's money on the hoof. Right.
Yeah. And what I was trying to portray too is the wild cattle that they had that came from Mexico and then up through here.
Right.
And California and all the way across to Texas, there weren't cattle. And so the first cattle were brought in by the Spaniards.
Right.
And found their way, and they got down in the mesquite brush and didn't get caught, and how they evolved is really fascinating. And at one time there were so many cattle roaming around that they would just shot them for sport. They didn't even there was no market, so they just shot them for sport. And
they still round them up in Hawaii. There's a lot of those, like on the Big Island, that they have to round up.
Right. Remnants.
They are remnants. Do we still have remnants in places like Colorado?
In northern Arizona, there are.
There are some.
Yeah. there's still people, cowboys, that go up in those rugged hills, just starting north of Cave Creek and, all the way up to Flag, that these cattle have gotten away from people. And so that's their job. People hire them to go in there and get them.
Yeah, ranchers, because they still have. Is it because they still have value as a cow or a steer, or is it because they want to put theirs on there and they're taking away the food, or is it a combo?
I don't really know. I just
Yeah.
I just know that there's people that rough guys. I mean, they.
Oh yeah, it's super hard, right?
Super hard. I mean, you got to know what you're doing. It's dangerous.
Super dangerous, right? Yeah, on many, because one, the cattle themselves are dangerous, right? I mean, they don't want to be rounded up, I would think.
No, but they're just like a wild animal.
Yeah,
so they can get away from you. They know that country. They know they've been up and down those hills a million times.
Right.
And here you are on a horse carrying a guy and trying to get him close enough to rope one.
Right. And then when you do, I got close enough.
And then you have to rope and tie him to a tree.
Yeah.
And then you lead him out, just like.
On the back of a horse?
No, you almost like you break them to lead.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't take 5 minutes. They get them roped, and then they may tie this one up, and then go get another one or whatever. And then when they go out, they just lead them like you're leading another horse.
And they'll do it. They'll go out.
Yeah.
Interesting. But they're always super high incline places that people can't get to easily. Yeah.
Very rough.
Yeah. Hard on your horses and hard on the everything. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. So now you've been doing this for, believe it or not, 40 years, right? Right.
Yes.
What kind of words of wisdom might you have to other artists that are teaching, 7th grade and really want to be painting or sculpting?
I talk to a lot of kids. Not a lot, but I have talked to kids before, and I just tell them, it's like, I'm sure you would tell somebody, do what stirs your heart.
Yeah.
Yeah. I truly believe that God puts in us little pieces of what we're supposed to be, and as we find them, He doesn't just give it to you. It's like everybody says, "Oh, you're a born artist." Well, I wasn't born being able to sculpt and paint.
Right.
You had to work at it.
Yeah.
It's like somebody, if they're a pianist, or it can be dance, any of the arts.
Right.
You still had to work at it. You had to learn.
Right.
Learn your tools.
Yeah. I think I agree with that. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Mm-hmm. I do think you have these things that you're supposed to do in life, and once you find it, do it fully, completely, regardless of what people say to you or tell you not to do,
or you tell yourself.
Yeah, that's true.
Insecurities, you'd say,
right.
Yeah, I wouldn't have built the studio if it hadn't been for my husband and the people on the executive board that we were on. And
you wouldn't have had as complete a life, for sure.
Right.
And in many levels, you wouldn't be going to the Briscoe as an artist. You might be going as somebody to buy art, but you wouldn't be on the other end of the stick.
Right.
And you can do your job long after you can go and rope a cow.
Yeah.
You can, or a steer in this case. And so you've made it. I mean, you've done it,
And now I'm just continuing to do it.
Yeah. And I think that's right. Yeah. So, and I never get to see you often. It seems like I see you every 5 years or somewhere along the line.
I know.
Where you come in and I don't know you're coming. But now I get to see you not only
two times in one.
But I know 2 times in the same month.
This month.
Yeah. Very good.
Yeah. Well, you'll be so busy and everybody be talking your ear off. So I'll wave at you from across the crowd.
I always like to be surrounded by the people I know the best.
Oh, good.
So
Me too.
I want the artists I know or represent. They come and come up and spend time with me. Yeah,
you'll have several there, I think.
Well, I have several that do the show. I don't
That's
know.
What I mean.
I don't know who all's going to show up, but hopefully a lot. I know this was going to. The last year was kind of a modified deal. It seemed like
because of the COVID thing, it was really different.
Yeah, and that's going to be completely different. It's going to be, I think, semi to very normal this year, because I just did the booth this last month, and it was it felt very normal. Good? Yeah, it felt odd in a weird way because it was so normal. And I was like, oh, this is
Yeah.
back. I remember these days 2 years ago. So, well, Jan, thank you so much. Thank you
thank
for
you.
the new 3 paintings and sculpture.
Oh, you're
I also
welcome.
want to get some of those bookends if we can.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that those would be, those would be phenomenal. Remnant. Is it remnants or remnant? It must be remnants.
Remnants. Plural.
Yeah, remnants. I want to see that one. Or go to the booth.
Yeah.
I mean, the Briscoe when they have their show, which is coming up in March. And I think that 25th.
That piece will also be at the Cowgirl Up show.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that too because
In
I'm
Wickenburg.
a huge Wickenburg fan. So
Me too.
Yeah, and that comes up very soon too, right?
Unfortunately, it's the same weekend as the Briscoe.
Oh boy,
And so I cannot be 2 places at
No.
one time.
no, you cannot. Oh, that's a shame. But
It
so,
is. But a great show.
yeah, it is. Cowgirl Up is at the Wickenburg Museum, and that is
The last weekend of March.
Yeah, so if you're in Arizona and you can't go to the Briscoe, or even if you can, do both.
Right.
Get your jet and go both places.
There you go.
For those people who can do it.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And by the way, you didn't say the word one time.
I think I did.
Nope. I didn't hear one of them.
Were you counting?
Yeah, I just wanted you
Like,
to see.
whoop, there's
She said,
one.
I'm going to say I'm going to say And I said, no, I don't think you will.
Or just as long.
Well, the reason you don't is because this is a conversation.
Yes, it is.
And it's not.
And once you forget about the mic
Yeah,
and the camera.
Yeah, it's just a conversation. It's not,
Right.
on stage with 1,000 people or whatever. Then,
Oh, man.
then your brain freezes up, and
Oh, man. And I'm a crier.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
okay.
So every time I have to do public speaking about something, and then I get into what I'm talking about, and then I'll get all emotional, and I'm going,
Yeah.
and I start crying.
Well, I think it comes from your creative side.
Yeah, could be.
Well, it is.
Could
Yeah, creative people feel and think and see things, I think, differently. They're very sensitive human beings. That's why they can do it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how?
Yeah, I cry when I'm happy. I cry when I'm
Yeah,
sad.
yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that means you're in touch with that side. Yeah, same with an actress or an actor, right?
Oh, true.
You know,
I could have been an actress because I can just about think of something and start crying.
Yeah.
Like when you lose your dog.
Yeah, well, yeah, let's not
See?
go there.
I know we'll both be crying.
Right, exactly. I don't want to think about those things. All right, Jan. Well,
thank you.
I'll let you go eat lunch, or your friends have already left and come back by now. So,
Oh, well,
yeah,
maybe they left me a crumb.
Yeah, I bet they did. All
Okay.
right, Jan Mapes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being on the Art Dealer Diaries.